All right. Hello, everybody. It's the Meista Brews and Tunes. Cheers. Very excited today. I am chatting with the multi-talented, multi-instrumental Taylor Nordberg of, man, so many bands, so many great bands. The Absence, Inhuman Condition, Goregäng, Scab, you name it. And some exciting news. I won't mention the band right now. We'll talk about that. But some very exciting news about a band that you recently got involved with. So we'll talk about that. But hey, how you doing, Taylor? Thanks so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Great. I'm doing really well. Yeah, excited to talk metal and see what you're up to these days. And as I just mentioned, there's some really exciting news that if people know you, I think they know about this and know the band. But and I'll let you kind of talk about it. You very recently posted that you have joined a legendary death metal band, and kind of how did that all happen, and who is that band?
Well, I recently started playing with Deicide.
Nice.
It's pretty awesome. Basically, I've known Steve for 4 or 5 years. We actually played in a cover band together.
Oh, nice.
It was called South of Rest Haven. It was Steve on drums. I actually played bass. Bill Hudson was on guitar.
Oh, wow.
Damien Gordon was on guitar, and Rob Barrett was also on guitar.
Nice.
And we did like Maiden and Priest and like Wasp, and I think we did like Mob Rules. Sad that we never really found a great singer, but we did a couple gigs.
Cool.
So I'd known Steve for a couple years, and then my other band, The Absence, did a tour with Deicide in the summer of 2019.
Okay.
And we all hit it off really well, and Florida guys hang with Florida guys, and found out that Glenn actually lives 2 streets over from where Jeremy and I live.
Oh, wow.
So, we kind of have the ongoing joke. He was like, "Oh, dude, if you guys are ever in the neighborhood," and I'm like, "Glenn, we're always in the neighborhood. We're right there."
Yeah.
So we all became good buds, and long story short, they needed a guitar player, and I kind of just learned a couple songs, made some videos, and Glenn saw and heard some stuff and invited me to a practice.
Oh, nice.
And then it all just kind of clicked. So been playing with them since late December, give or take. So it's been pretty killer so far.
Very cool. So you've been playing with them a little longer than the official announcement came, because that was very recent, just a couple weeks ago, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah, that's exciting. So are there gigs lined up, or you guys have some plans already, or even recording?
Well, we have a lot going on. We just got announced that we're playing Maryland Death Fest this year.
Oh, excellent.
So Morbid Angel dropped out, so we took their spot on Sunday at the Edison lot, which that'll be a blast. Can't wait for that.
Yeah.
We have a show tentatively booked, I think, in Vancouver in the end of May, but it's kind of all fingers crossed on, outside of the US stuff is kind of up in the air, it seems. We were supposed to be in Europe in April with Deicide, but that fell through.
Oh, okay.
Of course, now things are opening back up in Europe, but we'll see how that goes. We have a fest in Sweden in July, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, nice.
Again, hopefully that happens. And then we'll probably have some more US touring in the summer.
Very cool.
But right now we're just working on tightening up. We learned all of the Legion album because this year is the 30th anniversary of its release. So we're going to play the whole album for some festivals and some tour dates. So we've been hammering that out the last couple of weeks.
That's really,
and in addition to learning a back catalog of 12 albums, so it's been a lot to intake, but it's been a blast so far.
Nice. Yeah, I would imagine that's, well, I know you're a very prolific guitar player, and you probably knew some of the music already, but yeah, that's a you're looking at a 40+ year catalog of music. That's a lot of stuff to learn.
Yeah. Thankfully, we don't do every song, every album.
Yeah.
There's a lot to take in.
Yeah, that's exciting though. The Legion album in its entirety. That's really exciting, and I can't believe it's 30 years old. I feel really, really old.
Yeah, some of the songs on the album, I guess, have never been played live ever. So
wow.
This is pretty exciting to So, some of these people are like, oh my God, I can't believe it's actually happening.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's really cool. Yeah, God, I hope you guys get out this way.
Yeah,
that would be great. I'm out west, so yeah, I would love to. God, I'd love to see that. I missed Deicide the last time they came through here in Utah in Salt Lake City. I think that was in 2019, probably.
okay.
And yeah, I just had a conflict and couldn't make the show, and it was a drag. But yeah, that's really, really exciting news. Are there any plans as far as a new album? Has there been talk about that? Any new music?
Yeah, they had started most of a new album before I joined, but since announcing the Legion stuff, we've kind of shifted gears, and we're trying to, lock that in and get a site prepped or a set prepped just in the event that a show pops up. But they have most of a new album prepped, and then we're hammering out, ironing out some details with the last couple songs. So
nice.
Hopefully that'll be out this year. I don't know any, concrete plans on when we're going to start pre-production or recording or any of that, but
gotcha.
Hopefully this year. That would be awesome. But material's sounding killer and sounds like Deicide. So
cool.
Good.
Yeah, that's very exciting. Yeah, and you've got, I don't know how you even balance all of this. You're in multiple bands, you play multiple instruments. And one of my favorites, I like everything you're doing is really incredible. You do a lot of really cool stuff. But one of the one that I got really excited about was the old Inhuman Condition, which is such a great album. I was wondering if you'd kind of talk about that and kind of how that that kind of came out of the ashes of Massacre, kind of which ended up still happening, but it was not the same band, obviously. So I was wondering if you kind of chat about that and how that, because Inhuman Condition is it's for me, I would definitely say it's one of my top albums of 2021 for sure. It's such a phenomenal album and such a cool, it's Jeremy Kling on vocals and drums, and then of course the legendary Terry Butler, and then also Rick Ross plays on 2 tracks. What an incredible album. So how did that all start? How did that, kind of what was the impetus of that?
Well, flashback to late August, early September of 2019. Jeremy and I get a message from Cam Lee saying, hey, we might need some new guys to play some shows, fill in some dates, and possibly, join the band and work on a new album if it works out. And at the time, we're always busy, but we're kind of like, sure, we can put one more helping on our plate. Why not? So we joined and met up with them and started jamming and started coming up with some riffs, and they loved what they were hearing so far. So we kind of just, Jeremy and I are freak shows. We usually will just hammer out, 100 songs in, a week or something like that. So I think we ended up doing about 14 songs in about a month and a half. And we're kind of go people. We don't have time to wait for anybody.
Right.
But we have a studio here at Jeremy's house, and so we demoed the guitars, then we tracked all the drums for the record, and then tracked all the guitars for the record, and then we did a couple shows with the band in Europe and South America, and they were great shows. And things internally were getting to be a bit weird, and it kind of got to a point where Jeremy and I just had to remove ourselves from the situation.
Gotcha.
The songs were unfinished, basically, just aside from a few demos. And we knew that once we left the band that they were, obviously going to keep going and find new members. So we said, well, let's not just scrap this material. Obviously they're not going to use it. So let's put it out ourselves, start a new project. It's always hard to start a band from, ground zero, but
yeah,
we were like, well, let's just do it. We thought the music was strong, we still do. So, as Jeremy always says, after you break up with someone, all the exes always reach out and, you compare stories or whatever. So, we had tons of people reach out after we left Massacre, and including a handful of previous Massacre members, which was pretty funny. Two of those being Rick and Terry. And Terry was asking about the material, and we ended up sending him some songs, and he was like, "Wow, this is killer! Like, how would anybody not want to play on this?" So we were like, "Well, would you want to play on it?" And he was like, "Dude, absolutely." And the more we chit chatted, and we were like, "Do you want to do like a band, like a proper band?" And he was like, "Absolutely, I would love to, 100% be a full-time member of this." So
nice.
It's like, yes, we got Terry on board. Awesome.
Yeah.
Jeremy's known Terry for years, so it was like, he walked in and we were just old friends, which is cool.
Yeah, Terry's such a nice I met him on the 2019 70,000 Tons of Metal, and he's such a nice down-to-earth guy. Like,
he might be one of the most kind humans on the planet.
Yeah, he's such
the easiest to tour with, my God.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a pleasure having him play on the songs and hanging out and getting to know him. And we just decided to have Rick do a couple guest leads just as a little subtle jab. Also, we're fans of Rick, and we decided on calling the band Inhuman Condition because we didn't want people to think it was like a Massacre tribute album, because it was the new Massacre album up until we left. So we didn't want any confusion about that. And so we're like, well, Inhuman Condition is a pretty cool band name also. I mean, just given that, humanity is kind of crazy right now. And then Terry was like, well, I actually, I wrote that song Inhuman Condition. We're like, oh, perfect, even better.
Oh, yeah.
So it kind of just all the pieces aligned, and it has been just nothing but a total breeze and total pleasure being in that band. And there's no stress involved, and everybody is, on board with things, and their communication is crystal clear, and it's just like, could not be better.
That's great. I'm hoping, and it sounds like this could be the case since you guys get along so well, and it's such a, as you mentioned, it's it seemed to just fit perfectly well. Will there be a follow-up album to Rak God? Is there anything in the works at this point?
It's already wrapped up pretty much.
Oh wow, great.
So we put out Rak God ourselves last year. We licensed it out to a couple of labels around the world. We just sort of wanted to see how it would go, being a new band, and we're like, well, we also didn't want to wait, 6, 8, 10 months to get it out on a proper label. So we're like, let's just put it out and see what happens. And the response was overwhelming, which has been killer. And so that first album, Rak God, had 9 of the original 14 songs on it. Oh. And the other 5 were not scrapped because they were lesser than, they didn't like make the cut or anything. They were just sounded more like a second album. So those 5 songs are going to be on the new album. Cool. And then we wrote 4 other new songs. And that is mixed, mastered, artwork is finished. We just put in the vinyl order yesterday, actually. Nice. So that'll be out this summer. We haven't fully settled on a date or, released any info on it yet, but gotcha. It's killer. We're super stoked about it. The artwork is going to blow people's freaking minds. Nice. I'll tell you, Dan Goldsworthy did the art again, because he's great. Man, Babe Ruth, we call him, because he just knocks it out of the park every time. So yeah, great artist. And I like the fact that Rak God has has this kind of homage to Ed Repka, his artwork, but it's still its own thing. But there's kind of that vibe, that Ed Repka vibe of the late 80s, early 90s, which I thought was really cool too. What a phenomenal album. I listen to it all the time. It's like I said, it's definitely in my, if not my top 5, my top 10 for 2021. I'd say my top 5. It's such a killer album. It's such, I remember when I very first heard, I think it was, shortly after you would, the announcement had come out that you and Jeremy had left Massacre, and then, there was some talk, I don't remember where I read it, but when I heard that it was the, you two with Terry Butler, I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be amazing. I can't wait to hear this. And sure enough, it's just been a great situation since, as soon as we left Massacre, it was like, okay. Obviously it was a great band and it was a killer opportunity that we had, and it was difficult to walk away from, but it was like, well, needed to happen to get to where we are now. And it's been, like I said, no stress, and I can still listen to the album and not be like, you know, there's no bummer parts or like bad memories attached to it. It's all just,
that's good,
positive and good time.
Speaking of Jeremy, Kling, you two have been working together for quite a long time. How did that happen? And you collaborate on lots and lots of music, as you mentioned. You know, you guys write hundreds of songs in multiple bands, in different styles, different genres. How did you two come together? How did you meet? Did you click immediately, like musically, in terms of where, you know, your direction?
I met Jeremy in 2009. I was going to college at Full Sail in Orlando. I was going for music recording, and I joined this band at the time called Infernion, and it was like a black and death metal kind of thing. Jeremy was the hired drummer for that band at the time, and me and this other guitar player, you know, we were just kids. They basically hired us like, hey, join this band. They were signed to Prosthetic Records at the time, so it was like, oh my god. And they're like, you know, write us an album. And basically they were like, we're friends with Gwar and we're gonna go on tour with Gwar. And I'm like,
oh wow.
So, you know, being a dumb kid, we're like, yeah, absolutely. So we, you know, wrote out an album that didn't end up being too great, but different story. Jeremy was the drummer, and first time went over to jam with him, and we got along pretty great. And you know, we had a lot of musical interests, like odd things like, you know, Frank Zappa, and, you know, he liked Primus, and I thought that was cool. And we both liked Dark Funeral, and it was like, all right, we can click on this and that musically. And, you know, he liked horror movies, and we got along really well, and did that record together. And we're pretty close the next couple of years. But after college, I moved back to my parents' place in Pennsylvania. And Jeremy was always trying to get me to move back down, and he asked me to come fill in for the absence a couple times, and it just wasn't the right time. And then in early 2015, I ended up moving down. I've actually been living with Jeremy and his family since then. I've just become Uncle Teats to the kids.
Nice.
That's where that name came from. His daughter couldn't say Taylor, so she called me T-Toss. And then
nice.
Throughout the years morphed to Teats, Uncle Teats. So
cool. I was going to ask you.
Jeremy and I are always together. People are like, how do you guys get so much done? It's like, well, he lives about 50 feet that way, so that's how we get a lot done.
Right.
So I moved down to write what became A Gift for the Obsessed, which was an Absence album a couple years ago.
Great album.
And then, thank you. And then we just kind of, you know, have just become closer and closer since. And, you know, we have the same goals, and we're both driven like psychos, and we, you know, our priorities are like music, and how can we further this, and how can we reach out to this and just expand. And I don't know, we're just psychos really. But we just have so many interests. I mean, you get bands like your Metallica, and they don't really have the outlet for side projects.
Right.
I mean, now, of course, Kirk just announced he has some side project, which is pretty cool.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, for years, I mean, all those guys were only in that band, and they could only write music that's, you know, within the confines of Metallica. And that just like drove me crazy. I'm like, well, I like punk rock, and I like, you know, Aerosmith, and I like black metal, and you can't do all that in one band. So throughout the years, Jeremy and I would kind of like, all right, well, what if we do a Swedish death metal kind of thing? And then it was like, well, why don't you play drums? And I was like, okay, well, why don't you play guitar then? And you should sing in this band. And then, you know, Goregäng is born out of just a studio project. And then, you know, now we have 2 albums out, and another one, you know, that is already written. And
oh, nice.
And then we, you know, he has friends in Sweden. He's been over there studying with Pete Tägtgren and stuff at his studio. And so he has various Swedish connections. And then, you know, we ended up joining Rib Spreader and Womb Bath, and Jeremy sings in this band Skin Eater. So we have, you know, the Swedish side of things. And then, you know, like I said, I wanted to do a punk rock thing last year. And it was like, well, let's just do a punk rock thing. Why not? So go into the studio and hammer out some songs, and then get some guys that want to also be in a punk rock band, and just whatever we want to do, we just go for it, and then usually a band will come out of it.
Nice. And that's the band for the punk rock album you guys did.
Yep.
Very cool stuff too as well. And I would imagine, I was curious, you know, since you're right there together all the time, do you find and especially it seems like you're both, you know, prolific writers, do you find yourselves like waking each other up in the middle of the night? I'm like, hey, I've got an idea, wake up.
No, his wife probably wouldn't want me waking him up.
Right, yeah.
But no, usually, you know, we'll come in the morning and have a coffee, and usually somebody will have some piece of news or some idea for some new project or band, or, you know, oh, for our next release we should do this, or I had an idea last night at 3 a.m. So usually we'll converge the next morning around the coffee table. So
nice. Well, let's take a walk back in time. I'm really curious how you got started originally in music. Did you come from a musical family? Did you start originally with guitar? Kind of how did that all start? Because I mean, as you know, as we mentioned, you play multiple instruments. I mean, you play bass, guitar, drums, keyboards. I think you've done mixing as well in production. Mm-hmm. So you kind of do everything. Like you're a one-man band in a lot of ways.
Yeah. I didn't really come from a musical background, family-wise. I mean, my parents were always playing the Beatles and Alice Cooper and AC/DC and stuff. So music was around, and the Beach Boys and stuff. But I didn't really get into music heavily, I would say, until I was probably 11 or 12, when I first heard like the early Aerosmith records and Queen and CCR and some of that AC/DC stuff, Metallica. I didn't have a guitar until I was 13. I got one for Christmas. My parents finally gave in. You know, they gave me the "you'll never play it" speech. You know, like, no, I'll play it, I promise. And my older brother played the drums, so he got a drum kit maybe a year before that. And then I finally got a guitar. So then we sort of had a family band. We could jam and you know, get our chops down together, that was awesome. Just going down to the basement and having band practice. It was killer.
Nice. And
then it kind of just spitballed from there. We had a metal band in high school and wrote originals and did, you know, Megadeth and Metallica covers and stuff like that. And then, cool. After high school, I moved down to Florida, and that's when I met Jeremy, and kind of crazy snowball from there.
Nice. Does your brother still play?
No, he doesn't play too much anymore. He's actually a herpetologist. So he studies reptiles in Australia. That's where he lives right now.
Cool.
Yeah.
Exciting.
So he's still a huge music lover, but he just, given his living situation, he couldn't bring the drum kit to Australia. And,
yeah.
You know, he's a doctor now, so he's got a big boy job.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Yeah. That's exciting. Yeah, I love that. That's great. Yeah, and it sounds like, I think I'm not a musician, but it sounds like, we have a lot of similar taste, especially growing up, you know, kind of, you know, that early classic rock, you know, Alice Cooper, AC/DC, you know, Aerosmith, a lot of that, you know, I grew up listening to Metallica, Megadeth, a lot of the same things. Yeah, that's cool. I love that. I'd love to hear that. And I like the fact that both you and Jeremy have this, you know, as you said, this wide breadth of musical taste, and it's cool, as you mentioned. I think it's really cool that, you know, as you said, you know, Metallica, a lot of bands, like, they can't really do a lot of, especially if it's very far beyond what the type of music that they're known for, what they're, you know, they can't really be really hard to do that. And it's cool that you guys are like, well, fuck that. We're going to, you know, we're going to form a different band, and, you know, we want to play death metal, or we want to play black metal, or, you know, whatever and I love the fact that, there's no, it seems like the word no doesn't exist in your vocabulary musically.
No, we're definitely both yes men, unfortunately, sometimes. A lot of people say, well, you know, aren't you spreading yourself thin and not giving your bands your full attention? But we always say, no, I give every band 110%. I just, you know, just at different times, you know, when the Absence isn't doing something, we'll be working on a Goregäng album, or when none of those albums are doing anything, we're working on, you know, the new Venom Inc. album or something. So usually, have one thing be the focus of that, month or era, whatever. But we try not to overlap too much because we take all our bands pretty seriously. So
yeah, and I would say, yeah, I mean, when you hear the music, I mean, that's very evident that that's the case. It's not, yeah, there's no, and especially with your guitar work, I mean, one, your tone is incredible, and yeah, you're doing some really amazing things. Again, I'm not a musician, but I mean, just listening to it, you're doing a lot of cool stuff, and it doesn't sound like there's ever any, you're not putting one band aside for another band necessarily. It's yeah, you seem very focused. Both you and Jeremy seem very, very focused on anything you do, and I think that's, again, evident if you listen to any of the albums of any of your bands. It's like, wow, this is really tight and incredible music.
That's cool.
Are there any, and maybe this is a loaded question, but are there any, again, you play in multiple bands, are there any that you're kind of, maybe I shouldn't ask you this, but are you fonder of any, or even maybe just live? Are there certain certain styles you prefer to play live, or you find more enjoyable playing live? I don't know. You don't have to answer that, but
no, it's fine. I love all my children. Inhuman Condition has been a total blast so far. I mean, obviously I haven't played live with Deicide yet, and that's like a whole other level of awesome.
Yeah.
So that's for sure my priority band. But playing live with Inhuman Condition is a blast because it's all music that was written when I was a part of the band. Like The Absence, when we play live, we usually do half old stuff and half stuff since I'd been in the band, which is awesome because I love the old stuff. But there's just something about playing like riffs that you wrote and like songs that you were there when it was crafted. It's a cool experience to play those songs live. So the Inhuman Condition set is a blast. Also because it's not super crazy to play. It's not like, fingerboard aerobics.
Right.
Like some of the Absence stuff can get pretty challenging, which it's great and fun to play live, but you got to focus more, and it's more of a performance piece at that point, or like a recital almost.
Right.
Whereas we did some shows with the band Goregäng, and that was real fun because it's kind of crusty death metal stuff, no solos, or playing with four. I'm sure is going to be a blast because it's punk rock riffs. There's no solos, there's no crazy speed picking, there's no
just kind of straight ahead.
It's just riffing, which is fun. So I don't often just get to riff.
Are there shows planned, or do you have for four? Is there something
we've been kind of trying to, but then it's like, well, Brian lives in Canada and Speezy lives in Germany. So we either would have to fly both of them to the States, and then we'd have to have a run long enough to where it's financially worth it. Or we fly Jeremy and I to Europe and Brian to Europe. So that's 3 flights.
Yeah.
And then trying to find enough dates to where it's worth it. So we're, given that things are opening up and closing down, we're kind of just in a holding pattern for right now. We're actually working on a second album for that band as well.
Oh, cool.
Beezy's tracking his bass now. So we definitely would like to play shows, in between all of our other bands' schedules, but nothing concrete yet. It would be great to just jump on another tour of, Dead Kennedys or Bad Religion or something like that.
Yeah.
But obviously easier said than done.
All right.
But that would be ideal to jump on some other sort of, thrash punk tour.
Yeah, that'd be really cool. Yeah, and the nice thing is the word, I shouldn't say resurgence, but there are a lot of kind of punk and crossover bands that have been getting back together and touring. Like Circle Jerks are touring right now, I think. And
I just saw them a couple weeks ago.
Oh, nice, very cool.
They're awesome.
Yeah, and I think Cryptic Slaughter, and there's a bunch of bands that I think are kind of starting to do some things again. It's been years since they've done anything, which is really exciting. So I'm sure there'll definitely be something that will open up, and especially when they find out who it is, because it's you've really created a name for yourself. I think your name is out there. A lot of people are talking about Taylor, talking, you know, talking about Taylor Nordberg, talking about the bands you're in. And I mean, so I was curious in that regard, you've played with some pretty amazing people. Are there certain musicians that you would like to work with, as you know, that you're even pursuing at this point?
I mean, there's always the greats, like, you know, getting the call from Joe Perry from Aerosmith, like, hey, Brad can't make the gig tonight. Can you fill it?
Right.
It would be great to, you know, just share the stage with like Megadeth or Exodus. I mean, God, there's just so many. Metallica, how cool would that be to just, you know, play a show with them, a one-off or something?
Right.
On a realistic side, I mean, I don't know. I mean, every day something new and shocking pops up. I mean, I never thought I'd be in a band with Terry or Glenn or Steve or any of these guys. You know, I have the 70s rock band, Umbilicus, with Paul from Cannibal Corpse. It's like a kind of like Deep Purple-ish, Grand Funk, kind of with like a little bit of maybe a 90s tinge in there.
Oh, wow.
That's a new band, another project that, you know, we've been working on, which actually has the singer Brian from Four. He sings in this rock band.
Oh, okay, cool. What is this band called?
This band's called Umbilicus.
Oh, sorry, you said that. Okay, yeah, cool, very cool.
So I'm actually mixing that album right now. So that's another thing that I'm working on.
Wow.
But yeah, I mean, I never thought I'd be jamming with Paul either, and he's another dude that's one of the nicest people on this earth, and he just happens to be in the most brutal death metal band of all time.
Right.
So I mean, I'd love to jam with any of the Obituary guys in a project or go on tour with them or something. There's just so many killer bands around. I'm just happy to just be doing what I'm doing and know the people that I do.
I would imagine a lot of those bands you mentioned, are there particular guitar players that were kind of, you know, instrumental in your, you know, in your development as a player?
Definitely Joe Perry and Brad Whitford from Aerosmith, for those who don't know. Obviously Kirk and James from Metallica, you know, Dave Mustaine, Marty Friedman. I liked a lot of the guitar duos, you know, Adrian Smith, Dave Murray, Glenn Tipton, KK Downing. Richie Blackmore was pretty big for me. Chris Poland from Megadeth. His whammy bar technique is like continues to blow my mind to this day.
Right.
Excuse me. Uli John Roth in some later years. Yeah, and then just guys like David Gilmour, you know, a guy that could bend one note and that could be his whole solo, and it's like, oh, that was the best solo ever, you know? So yeah, you're trying to revisit some of these artists that, you know, first influenced me in my, you know, teen years. Revisiting some of these influences has been kind of nice to go back and be like, oh yeah, that guy actually influenced me more than I remembered. Right.
Well, and it's interesting when you're naming a lot of these players, and particularly like David Gilmour and Richie Blackmore, with the tone, like you said, you know, like just one note, and it's this incredible tone. But you have a really rich tone. I mean, even with the really thrashy death stuff, there's still, you know, you can still sense this underlying really rich tone that you have. I think it comes out in certain projects more so than others, depending on the style of the playing, but it's definitely there.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's like, you know, and I think with the Absence, I mean, I think that's what, I mean, the band is great, but I think that's one thing that really drew me to the Absence was just the guitar work alone was just incredible. It's just, it's a thing of beauty.
We always say that band is guitarded. It's a lot of guitar notes, and it's like some of the songs in the last album had, I think, one bridge had like 9 guitar tracks or something. It was like, wow, Queen territory.
Yeah, that's amazing. Wow, that's cool. That's really cool. I love it. Well, this is great. This has been so great chatting with you, Taylor. I've really enjoyed this. I'm really excited for the multiple projects that you have going on and what's coming out soon. You know, Deicide, of course, the fact that there's a Inhuman Condition album in the can, ready to go. Basically, I cannot wait to hear that. And the other projects you mentioned as well. I'm really excited to hear all of this. So again, thank you so much for meeting with me. This has been
absolutely.
great.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, this is great. So yeah, have a great day, and yeah, I look forward to hearing new music and new projects to come in the future.
I'm sure there'll be more.
I'm sure there will. Thank you so much.
Yep, no problem. Have a good one, bud.